up, she will stop and retrieve an APFR from an airlock toolbox that's on the forward face of the airlock. And this is the APFR that she'll be using in the station's robotic arm while she's performing these ORU transfers. She'll then transfer up along the row of handrails you can see flashing here to the forward face of the truss. And she will translate toward the port direction of the truss and over the CETA carts and up onto the MT and MBS that you see on the right-hand side of your screen here. That is where the ESP3 external stowage platform will be located, which is currently carrying the nitrogen tank assembly, and that's the large rectangular box that you see pretty much in the center on the top of that stowage platform in this view. Heidi will get on the port side of that platform over in the right-hand side. She will guide the arm in. Our arm operator will be Don Pettit, assisted by Sandy Magnus. Heidi will guide the arm up into place so that she can install that foot restraint into the arm, and she'll set that up, and then she'll guide the arm back into a position so that she can ingress that foot restraint. You can see over here on the left at the corner of that pallet near the NTA, that represents Steve. He will be standing by to assist Heidi with removal of the NTA and watch her clearances to the pallet while they're working there. Once Heidi has the NTA off, she'll reorient it to make it a little more comfortable to carry, and Don will translate her down to the payload bay. As she's translating to the payload bay, Steve will be translating along the structure. As he goes past Node 2, there's a flap on the zenith side of Node 2 over the berthing mechanism that he'll close, and then he'll meet Heidi down here at the LMC in the aft end of the bay. They'll work together to berth the NTA, as you see here, then move up a few feet and retrieve the FHRC. They'll fly it clear of the bay. Heidi will reorient it to get it in the correct orientation for berthing on ESP3, and then Don will fly her up to the ESP3. This FHRC will install back in the same location that we just cleared when we removed the NTA. Steve will translate back up and meet her there and assist with the berthing of the FHRC. There may be a little time for Steve on the way up to stage some Sarge bags in preparation for our Sarge task later. Once they have completed berthing the FHRC, Heidi will then egress the arm. She will reconfigure that foot restraint that she has used. We're going to leave it in the arm between EVAs 1 and 2 because Shane Kimbrough will be using this same foot restraint for EVA 2. So Heidi's just going to fold it back out of the way so that it doesn't interfere with our arm operations. In the meantime, Steve will translate along the handrails on top of the lab in Node 2 that you see flashing here. And this will carry him out to the gym. He'll translate along the aft side of the gym out to the very far port end cone where the external facility berthing mechanism is located. And these are the 5 covers that we'll be removing. There's 4 small covers that are over the 4 small pedals around the circumference of the berthing mechanism, and then there's 1 large circular cover in the center. The 4 small covers that you see here, Steve will remove those and put them into a bag to return inside the airlock at the end of the EVA. Those covers will not be reinstalled. The large center cover, however, will be reinstalled after the checkout. That cover will be reinstalled on the EVA4. So Steve is just going to temporarily stow it right around the corner rather than bringing it in so that it's right there handy on EVA4 to be reinstalled. And that we're reinstalling that to provide some protection for some electrical connections and umbilicals that are in the center portion of that berthing mechanism in between our mission and STS-127. While Steve is doing that, Heidi will be translating out to S3, setting up our bags and getting ready to begin work on the Sarge. And that will be what will occupy the rest of EVA1. Heidi will translate along the handrail that you see flashing here to the starboard Sarge. For this EVA, the starboard Sarge will be parked at an angle of 105 degrees. Heidi will set up a large bag with the tools and equipment and parts that she needs for this EVA, then translate up onto the top zenith portion of the Sarge and go to work in an area up there where there's already 1 cover removed. The cover that you see removed already is cover 7. It was removed on a previous inspection EVA and brought back inside and left off so we could perform periodic robotic inspections of the Sarge. Heidi will remove cover 8 right next to it. And this will be the first area that we will clean and lubricate on the Sarge. The next step is to remove the trundle bearing assembly, the item you see flashing here. It'll go into a special bag that will help contain the debris on it, and then Heidi will start cleaning. Here we see Heidi training the cleaning steps in the NBL. The first step is to retrieve what we call a wet wipe. This is a terry cloth mitt that goes over the EMU glove. It has a coating of grease already applied to it. Heidi will use this to kind of daub along the outboard race ring and then wipe up that loose debris. Then she will apply a thin bead of lubricant using our grease gun. This will be the brake coat lubricant that we're using to lubricate the Sarge. This is in preparation for wet scraping, and this is the technique that Mike Fossum tested out during the DTO in 124. She'll then retrieve a Sarge scraper, which is basically a putty knife that she'll use to spread that grease out first and then scrape up some small collections of metal filings that have been collected together and crushed down onto the damaged surface of the race ring as it rolled under those trundle bearings. So this wet scraping will pick those up, and she'll deposit that grease and those shavings into a little box that she's wearing on her workstation that you see here, called a scraper debris container. She'll then retrieve a dry wipe, which is a terry cloth wipe just like the one we used previously, except with no grease pre-applied. And she'll use it to wipe up the remaining grease and metal filings on that outboard race ring. And she'll clean all three of the bearing surfaces, both the inner canted, the datum A, and then the outer canted, which is the damaged surface on there. Once that is complete, that completes the cleaning process. She'll then begin the lubing process. The first area we'll apply the lubricant to is going to be the inboard, inner canted surface, rather, of the outboard race ring. She'll use a J-hook nozzle that we call here. You can see how the hook on this nozzle at the end of this grease gun has a J on it. That is to allow her to get that grease around on the back side of this race ring. Once she has completed greasing the inner canted surface, she will then retrieve a straight hook grease gun. This is the same one that you saw her using previously for the wet scraping. Now she'll apply a bead of lubricant all along the datum A surface and then also along the outer canted surface. And that will complete the lubrication steps. Now that just leaves a bead of lubricant down the center of each of these bearing surfaces. When the Sarge gets rotated later, as that lubricant passes under those bearings, it will be spread out over that entire surface of the bearing. The last step then is for Heidi to install a clean trundle bearing package. It installs in two pieces. The first piece you see her working with here is called the mount package. It has a little clamp leg on the back that opens up, allows it to be seated onto the outer side of this race ring, and then she reaches through and pushes that clamp leg down to soft dock that in place. And then it has one bolt that she'll drive with her PGT to secure the mount package onto the inboard race ring. The second part of the trundle bearing assembly is the bearing package that you see Heidi handling here. It has 3 trundle bearings on it, and these are the bearings that the outboard race ring rolls through as the Sarge is rotated. This bearing package slides onto the mount package, and then there's 2 bolts on here that Heidi will use her PGT to secure the trundle bearing assembly in place, and that forms the structural attachment between the inboard and outboard race rings of the Sarge. While Heidi is performing that work, when Steve is finished with his work on the gem, he will translate out and meet her at the starboard Sarge. And he'll begin working down here on the 2 covers you see flashing. This is covers 22 and cover 1. He will remove the trundle bearing beneath those and perform the same cleaning and lubrication steps that we just demonstrated Heidi performing, and then reinstall those covers. Heidi will reinstall her cover on the top, and that is the planned Sarge activity that we have for EVA1. Now, Heidi will get out there a little bit before Steve, so she will probably have a little bit of extra time to perform some additional work. So I have a graphic here that illustrates a little bit better the exact areas of the Sarge that we'll be working on. Now, you can see at the very top, slightly to the right, the cover 7 and 8 area. That was the first area that I showed you where Heidi will be working, and trundle bearing 10. Down on the left-hand side is cover 22 and cover 1, and trundle bearing 6. That's where Steve will be working, and that you saw in the video. We expect Heidi to have enough time to complete her work under cover 7 and 8 and be able to do cleaning and lubrication of another section. So she will move to her immediate right, covers 9 and 10 that are shown in kind of dashed red lines here, and trundle bearing 11. Remove trundle bearing 11, perform cleaning and lubrication of that area. But we're not planning to reinstall trundle bearing 11 on EVA1. We'll just reinstall the covers 9 and 10. If time allows, we'll have Heidi remove cover 11 and clean under that one as well. By doing that, that sets us up for a rotation that we're going to perform on the Sarge between EVAs 1 and 2.